the south of France, behind a door painted in trust. She hung their photos on the wall and called their life enough. They gave the house a name, you see, a name she wore like a belief. House of happiness, she said it proud, not knowing what lay underneath. She never chose the dark that came. Something slipped into what she drank. She didn't rest, she was taken under by the hand she trusted most. They called it the house of happiness, but happiness was just the cage. He passed the key to strangers' hands while she lay under unheard. The man who swore to shelter her became the architect of a shame. And somewhere on a darkened screen, they traded in her name. Then came the knock, she didn't know what evidence had gathered there. The photographs, the records kept, the truth too heavy for the air. She sat inside a courtroom glass and chose to face them everyone. Not for herself alone, she said, because she knew she wasn't the only one. She never chose the dark that came. Something slipped into what she drank. She didn't rest, she was taken under by the hand she trusted most. They called it the house of happiness, but happiness was just the cage. He passed the key to strangers' hands while she lay under unheard. The man who swore to shelter her became the architect of shame. And somewhere on a darkened screen, they traded in her name. It crosses every border, every bed, every woman who woke up and couldn't say what happened. Every forum, every file, every thread, teaching men to take what she would never have given. But she walked in that courtroom without a veil and faced every face that thought they never answer. She said, this name is mine and I won't let it fail. She gave it to us all, every wife, every mother, every daughter, every sister. We are wide awake and we are coming for the truth. They called it the house of happiness, but happiness was never theirs to sell. He passed a key to strangers' hands and built a private hell. But she walked out into the light and called them by their borrowed shame. And every woman who was taken under, we carry Gisèle's detailed name. She never knew, and now she knows everything. She stood up anyway. She stood up for all of us. Gisèle's name. Gisèle's
Live on the air, Trial Junkies United presents Justice After Dark with your host, Z.
Thank you, Doc. So glad you guys are all here. We've got, of course, our beautiful mod Fala, and we have therapist, and Drunky. Simi is here. This is gonna be a deep one. We're putting a trigger warning out there for people. If you need to step away, we totally get it. But this is one we have to tell. I'm Z, your storyteller in the wilderness of injustice, with my ride or die Doc riding shotgun as we navigate the darkness where the predators hunt and the system fails. And we're ready to shine a light on the forgotten stories society prefers to leave buried. So buckle up. The path ahead grows bumpy as we lead you through another section of this nightmare we call the justice system. Doc, are you ready for this one?
I certainly hope so.
Yep, we're going to need everything we got to get through it. Hey, Mustang. In fact, I have my special shirt on with my space alien that says, I see humans, but no humanity. Because I thought that was very fitting for tonight. So here we go. Buckle up, everybody. And before we get into anything else tonight, I want to introduce you to a woman named Gisele. Gisele Pelicot is how she was known, is 73 years old. She lives in France. Hey, Southern gal, good to see you. I'm glad you made it. Now, Gisele is a grandmother. She's a retired woman who loved and trusted her husband, and by every account, had a good life. She and Dominique, the bottom feeder Pelicot, met when they were 18 years old. They had been together for nearly 50 years. She used to look at him and say, how lucky am I? You're a darling. You really take good care of me. And she meant it. She had no idea what he was actually doing. But the bottom feeder was a retired electrician. He was a grandfather, a neighbor described as pleasant, fun, helpful. People liked him. He was athletic and outdoorsy, exactly the kind of guy you'd want living next door to you. But he was also systematically drugging his wife, crushing sedatives into her food, her favorite dessert, which is raspberry ice cream at night, and her drinks, rendering her completely unconscious. Then he would invite strangers he recruited online into their bedroom to sexually assault her. Not saying the word, but there it is, people. Over time, he had perfected a method where he mixed the sleeping pills, some anxiety medication, into foods with strong flavors because their daughter said they like to cook with garlic, a heavy pinch of salt to mask the taste. He tried to put it in her beer once, but the beer turned green, and she noticed, and he grabbed it and poured it down the drain. He never made that mistake again. It took him time to find the right combination, but eventually he had what investigators would later call the perfect cocktail. And the effect was not only sleep. The forensic psychiatrist who examined him said it was closer to a coma. Gisele was not resting. She was under, and he filmed everything. He photographed everything. He saved everything. This went on for nearly a decade, from 2011 to 2020. Think about that. She had no idea. She thought she was getting Alzheimer's. She thought something was wrong with her brain. Her daughter was worried about her mother's health. She would wake up exhausted and confused with no memory of the night before, sometimes with unexplained bruises. Sometimes her clothes might be disturbed. She went to the doctor. She was worried about her health. And it wasn't just the confusion and the memory loss. During these years, she was also experiencing some gynecological problems she couldn't explain. Infections whose origins she couldn't understand. She had no framework for what was happening because the person causing it was the same person sitting across from her at breakfast every morning. And the answer was not Alzheimer's. The answer was that this person she had trusted with her life had been chemically incapacitating her and allowing strangers to violate her body for 9 years while he filmed it. Think about that. He was filming it.
I think I'm going to be sick.
I know, Doc. This is a tough one. That's why we had the trigger warning. And in October of 2020, the bottom feeder was caught by a supermarket security guard, thank God, upskirting. Now, upskirting is filming up the skirts of women. And he had done this to 3 women on his cell phone. The police were called. He was arrested. They seized his phone. And what they saw on the phone concerned them because they found some files. So they obtained search warrants for his home and his devices. But here's what I need you to sit with for just a moment. Because this detail matters. The police knew they were seeing what he was doing to his wife. For 2 months, they investigated without telling Gisele a thing. She went home with him. She ate breakfast with him. She went to bed beside him every night, and he didn't stop. Hey, Chris, welcome. Only when the police called him back to the station and told him to bring his wife did Gisele's world end. 20,000 videos and photographs dating back to 2011, documenting the systematic assault of his own wife by at least 70 men. 70, all of whom the bottom feeder had recruited online. He vetted them and invited them into his home while she slept, unaware. Thanks, Fowler, for putting that out. Because, yeah, if you need to step away for a moment, do it. But this story is important. We're gonna tie it in. Just hang on, guys. She was violated more than 200 times. Not all of the men could even be tracked down by the police. A police officer sat down with her and told her, "I'm going to show you photos and videos that will not please you." Like, duh. He showed her an image of a woman being assaulted by a man she didn't recognize. "That's you in the photo," the officer told her. Gisele wrote in her memoir that her brain stopped working in that moment. "I didn't recognize the individuals, nor the woman. Her cheeks were so flabby, her mouth was so limp. She was a rag doll. That rag doll was me." Think about that. Doc, Vala said they can hear you fluttering around.
Yeah.
Are you arming up?
Yep.
And I have questions for those cops. Would you have let your daughter or a female relative you cared for go back into that situation with no warning? Yeah. 51 men were put on trial in the French city of Avignon. 51 cesspool rejects, if you ask me, who had visited a stranger's home, been told that the woman was asleep in the bedroom, had consented to being filmed and touched, and chose to proceed anyway. On the videos, you can hear her snoring. She's out. The defendants were not criminals on paper. They were the people from the towns and villages surrounding their home, most within a 30-mile radius. Think about that. So these are going to be people you're going to run into. They were firefighters, lorry drivers, security guard, a journalist, a soldier, a DJ. These were men with jobs, men with families, with daughters. Of course, most of them denied the wrongdoing. Some of them claimed they'd been manipulated by the bottom feeder. Others said they had no idea the woman was unconscious and that she hadn't consented. She was snoring, you morons. One man said he only learned what consent meant when he was sitting in prison awaiting trial. Really? One of the cesspool rejects said that the bottom feeder himself, though, now he stood up in court, her husband, and said something that became one of the most quoted lines in the entire trial. He said, "I am an R word like the others in this room. They knew everything." So he admitted it openly in court. But the psychiatrist said with a swagger, and they said they found that deeply unsettling. And when those cesspool rejects arrived at the house, his control didn't end at the door. He gave them instructions. They were to park several hundred meters away at the sports complex down the road so that the neighbors wouldn't notice unfamiliar cars. They weren't to wear cologne, no cigarettes, nothing with a strong scent that could reach her through the sedation. Whisper only. Do not have cold hands. The sensation could wake her. Okay, does that sound like she knew what was going to happen to her? If you're taking those kind of precautions, those are your instructions, and you cesspool rejects are going to say, well, we didn't know. Oh, please. He had a protocol. For years, for dozens of men, the files on his device were organized. Each man had his own folder. The master file contained everything, and it had a name. It was just called plain abuse. And these men knew that they were being filmed. I mean, really? It blows my mind. But Gisele had a choice when the trial began. Yes, Emmy, you're probably right. He wanted to make sure the others went with him. You see, French law does allow for her to remain completely anonymous. Okay, she didn't have to give her name. And no one would have ever spoken her name, and the public would never have known who she was. But Gisele, no. She waived her right to anonymity. She demanded that the proceedings be open to the public. She said, and these are her words, shame must change sides. Because it wasn't her shame. She sat in that courtroom for more than 3 months. Every day in the same room is every one of those cesspool rejects who had violated her. She listened. She watched. She refused to disappear. That takes guts. I'm going to tell you. Mm-hmm. And that's just like the files. See, all interconnected, all these people. She became a symbol across France and around the world. Her image and her now iconic sunglasses appeared in street art throughout the country. Rallies were held in her honor. Women who'd never met her felt seen by her courage. During appeal proceedings at one point, when one of the convicted rejects claimed the videos were merely sex scenes, Gisele turned around, looked directly at him, and said, "This is not a sex scene. And without a condom, when did I ever give you consent? Never." You go, girl. On December 19th of 2024, a jury in Avignon delivered its verdicts. 47 of the 50 charged cesspool rejects were found guilty of aggravated sexual assault. 2 were found guilty of attempted assault. 1 was convicted of a lesser charge. The bottom feeder himself was found guilty on all counts and sentenced to 20 years in prison. That's the maximum under French law. At the age of 72, he may spend the rest of his life in prison. He can't even request early release until he's served at least 2/3 of his sentence. The other defendants received sentences ranging from 3 to 15 years only. Yeah. Now, her children, who were grown, testified at the trial. Her son, David, said, "Our family has been destroyed. I expect from this trial that these men and the bottom feeder will be punished for the horrors they have inflicted on my mother." Her son, Florian, he testified that the case had led to the dissolution of his own marriage. He asked for a lengthy sentence so that the victims no longer had to fear Now, her daughter, who writes under the pen name Carolyn Darien, said she now believes she was also drugged and assaulted by her father. Because you see, investigators did find a photo of her asleep wearing her mother's underwear, but they couldn't find any other evidence. So they said there was insufficient evidence to prosecute him for anything that he might have done to his daughter. And the daughter said, the only difference between my mother and me is the lack of evidence against him for me. And that's a tragedy. I mean, think about that. You know, he was convicted of charges of just, I guess, filming, but not any assault. Ugh. He also had planted hidden cameras in the family home, his bathroom, secretly recording his son's wives as they showered and undressed when visiting, women who believed they were safe inside the family home. Carolyn said it plainly, no woman was safe in that household. And maybe that's why the one son's wife ended up divorcing him, because she just couldn't take the knowledge of what had happened to her in that house. I don't know. But since the trial, Gisele has been honored as the Knight of the Legion of Honor, France's highest civilian honor for her courage. Her memoir is called A Hymn to Life. Shame has to change sides. And she has left her home in Mazan. She has dropped her married name, and she told reporters she didn't want people to grow bored with her story or to forget what the world has learned from it. But she also finally is trying to return to a somewhat normal life. He says, I want you to hear me clearly. I want any woman who wakes up one morning with no memories of the night before to remember what I said, so that no more women can fall prey. There is one more detail from the aftermath of this trial I need you to hear, and that's at least 6 of the 50 convicted cesspool rejects. Some are out. They're out of prison. Some have already returned to their old jobs. One man's employer told him his position would be waiting for him upon his release, despite his conviction in one of the most high-profile trials in France in that generation. Think about that. Yeah, you can come back to work, Bob. The French parole system allows release after as little as 1/3 of a sentence is served, particularly if a prisoner is elderly, has demonstrated good behavior, or has property to return to. Just because you have a house, you get out? Really? Yeah. Some were not even sent to prison when the trial concluded because of reported health conditions. Yet they were able to go to a woman's house and essay her. Within 10 days of the verdicts, 17 of these cesspool rejects filed appeals. Some of those appeals have been withdrawn. Excuse me. But a Sunday Times reporter, Katie Tarrant, went back to France, and she wanted to see if shame actually had changed sides. And her answer was not simple. For victims, she believes something has shifted. But after speaking with some of the convicted men and their families, she was not certain the rejects themselves felt that shame. And there is more to the story that has not been resolved. Investigators actually now believe, hey, Sleuthy, good to see you, sweetie. Hope you're feeling better. That the bottom feeder, there may be crimes dating back decades before his first assault on Gisele. Police in Paris are investigating him in connection with a 1999 attack on a young real estate agent. A woman, they use the name Marion, and she was violently attacked, gagged so she couldn't scream, and then strangled. Her crime scene DNA remained unidentified for more than 2 decades. But in 2022, when the police entered the bottom feeder's DNA into the database, guess what? Ding, ding, ding. It matched. He denied it, and then the investigators made it clear that the genetic evidence showed he was there at the scene, and then he admitted he had been there. He has not been yet charged because France's statute of limitations means too much time has passed for the case to proceed on its own unless investigators can link it to another unsolved crime. France, you have some loopholes to close up in your laws. I'm just saying. Please. Yeah, I do. That other crime is the 1991 deletion of a woman named Sophie Nam, who was killed in her Paris apartment 8 years before Marion was attacked, in what her attorney, Florence Royault, described as a strikingly similar case. But Sophie's DNA evidence was lost by the police. Yeah. Her lawyer has been fighting for justice for 24 years for Sophie. And he said, if we wait for Dominique Pelicot to confess, we'll wait forever. And I have questions. How many more women are invisible in this story? How many more victims could actually be out there? And also on another note, how many women are waking up right now with no memory of the night before, being told it's their anxiety, or maybe they were drinking, or their imagination? How many of them will never have a trial, never have a verdict, never have a police officer who believes them? How many of the men who did this to them learned to do it from each other? And this leads us to the latest discovery. Because the online network, what happened to Gisele, was not an isolated story, you guys, born from just the one twisted bottom feeder. This is connected to something much larger, much more organized, and much more widespread than most people know. Now, the bottom feeder used a platform where he was recruiting these cesspool rejects it was a dating website called Coco. Inside a chat room titled, I Need You to Really Hear This Now, without her knowledge. So the guys that claimed we didn't know, she had no clue, but you're on a dating website titled without her knowledge. Yeah. That math ain't mathin'.
Well, it's a new math.
Psychomath.
There you go.
And now the site was shut down after the trial. Thank goodness. The behavior did not stop. It moved. Now, CNN published an investigation revealing a sprawling visual network spanning chat platforms, forums, and websites where men post, trade, sell, and stream recordings of themselves essaying their unconscious victims. Most of these victims are their own wives, partners, or dates. Makes me think of the photos from the Epstein photos. The Snow White, remember? Snow White story? Yeah. She gets poisoned by an apple and falls into a death-like sleep or a coma. So maybe some of those Epstein predators' wives should be thinking about this. Because if they have a fantasy about Snow White, what part of Snow White are they into?
Mm-hmm.
Hey, Julius, welcome. So these are the step-by-step instructions that these gutter rats, we're going to call them in these spaces, give each other. This is the guidance on which drugs to use and how much. And here's one of the exchanges that they made with an undercover journalist, and it's going to blow your mind. The gutter rat says, 2 sleeping tablets plus alcohol should be enough. Even 1 tablet is sufficient if more alcohol is involved. The journalist asks if his wife suspects anything, and he says he's hiding everything well, but has to be careful. This is his reply when he's telling her what to use. Vala wants my shirt. They share guidance on avoiding detection, on positioning cameras. They have something called the eye check videos, in which these gutter rats film themselves lifting a woman's closed eyelid to prove she's truly unconscious. Some of these videos have surpassed 50,000 views. I want you to think about that.
Yeah, think about that when you think about how many icky people are out there.
Yeah. Compared to how many views we can get on the stories outing these people.
Yeah.
That's why we need to share and get this out there. 50,000. Now, one of the websites, I'm not naming them because we're not going to give them any publicity. They call themselves a moral-free file host, where anything legal is hosted forever. Hosts more than 20,000 videos of so-called sleep content that have garnered hundreds of thousands of views. Hundreds of thousands. The site drew 62 million visits in February alone. April is Sexual Assault Awareness Month. That number has climbed to 82 million. It's still on. It is still up. This website is still up. 82 million visits in a single month to a site hosting recordings of women being assaulted in their sleep. Now, this number tells us everything of how normalized this has become. And here's something that should infuriate every person watching tonight. Not one of these gutter rats participating in these networks, to any investigator's knowledge, has reported what they have seen to the police. Not one. They either watched or they participated. They download and they share. And they stayed silent. That makes them complicit in these crimes. Some of these people are minors. I want you to think about that. We'll go into a story about that. The platforms that host this content, they hide behind legal protections that say they're not responsible for what their users post. So the content is still there. The networks keep growing, and the numbers climb from 62 million to 82 million in a single month. The law is protecting the wrong people, and that needs to stop. These are not anonymous victims of these gutter rats. These are their wives, their girlfriends, the people who normally sleep beside him, who trust them, who have no idea this is happening to them. And we're going to tell you about three. The first one, we'll call her Melanie. She lives in Canada, and we're not saying where. She's terrified. She's every right to be. In 2023, on the weekend of her wedding shower, she was dress shopping, celebrating her future with her friends, having a great time. She gets a Facebook message. It said, "If you don't email me the photos and videos the bodybuilder has taken, I will leak to everyone." Attached was this single blurred image. She opened it. She saw herself unconscious, being assaulted by a man she recognized immediately. They called him Jeff, an ex-boyfriend who she had dated more than a decade earlier when she was just 17. She said it looked like a dead body. I knew it was me, but she says, I felt lifeless. I had no idea this had happened. She says, our relationship had ended on good terms. We were together for only 2 years. I was 19 when we broke up. She says, I never consented to being photographed or recorded. But in the footage they had sent her, she could see him setting up the camera, walking around the room, positioning her. Every deliberate move captured on film. She can see it all now. She remembers none of it. She called her fiancé, Steve, and he's a doctor. And he went to the police. The extortionist carried out his threat, though. He sent the images directly to her mother, her siblings. Now, Steve began to do his own investigation because they also sent him to his family. He found something far worse than just the single screenshot. On a public site, he found dozens of videos of a teenage unconscious Melanie being violated and tortured. And then these videos were being sold and traded through an international network for years, used like currency. Piecing it together, Melanie recalled that this ex had pushed her to take what he called a natural diet supplement before bed. When she said they made her sick and she wanted to stop, he got upset with her. He even fabricated an email from a supplement company claiming they were safe. Police determined that she had been drugged at least 30 times, likely with a homemade sedative, using his medical knowledge. Now, her fiancé identified in some of the videos that Melanie was unable to even draw breath. Being a doctor, he said she came very close to dying in some of these videos, multiple times. And there are comments some of these gutter rats make to each other about, I almost killed, my victim. And people are giving them the thumbs up. Think about that. I mean, really. Now, this ex kept going. He actually victimized at least 2 other women. Julie, his girlfriend before Melanie, and Julie was only 15 when her abuse began. And she only learned about it in 2024 when the police showed up, the RCMP. And then his own wife, she had defended him in court as he was a loving and safe. But then she found out about her being a victim. She's now filed for divorce. A 4th woman, Catherine, has also come forward. Her abuse began when she was 9. She was his stepsister. When police raided his home, they found more than 10,000 images and videos of C-SPAM material involving very young ones. Hidden cameras inside a chair armrest, a memory card containing 30 recordings of Melanie, along with instructions for making a homemade date drug. He pleaded guilty and was only sentenced to 16 years, eligible for parole as early as 2029. Think about that. 16 years for all those lives that he's destroyed. But Melanie's story's not over, because Steve, while he was searching for these videos, and he thought he was going to have to dig into the dark web, it's easy to find. He didn't have to. It was just so easy for him to trip on these sites. And the videos are still circulating. Melanie's photos and videos are still out there. These gutter rats in these networks, they know her full name. They know her profession. They know the city and where she works. They have gathered this information because when you put your loved one out there like this, there are some very demented people that become stalkers. So you're not only putting them out there to share, and let me be very clear, some of these men are making money off of these videos.
Oh, and not just a few bucks either.
Well, and some of them aren't making a lot. Some are making very little.
Yeah.
But it's just the control, Semi's got her dog to protect her. Yeah. I mean, you need something.
Yep.
But think about that. Melanie's photo, and she was 17 at the time of some of these, and we have to ask, did that other girlfriend when she was 15, are her photos and videos out there? That's a minor. Now, some have discussed plans to come find her in person. Think about that. Some of these people, and this is happening now. And as she said at the end of the interview, she says, I may never be safe. And here's where this story crosses an ocean. While this was the Canadian journalist, Avery Haynes, her interviews were top. Her story was awesome. And she was deep in the investigation of this case. Melanie started getting calls in her workplace from Germany. Well, Melanie got scared. She thought someone was trying to extort her again. So she let Avery know. Well, Avery jumps on a plane to go to Hamburg, Germany, find out what's going on. But what she discovers, it wasn't a threat. It was a warning. There were two German investigative journalists, Isabel Beer and Isabel Strude, working for the public broadcaster NDR. And they had independently been tracking the same network. And that's what's on the screen right now. They're better than the cops. I'm going to tell you right now. These ladies put together these cases. These are investigative reporters. And they were the ones that had found out that Melanie's full name, her profession, her city were being openly shared in these Telegram groups. Because that's what they do, is they go on to Telegram, which we've all heard about how, Telegram is so security conscious. And some of these gutter rats had been discussing plans to visit her in person. Can you imagine? You don't even know these videos are out there, and some dude shows up. Think how creepy that would be. The journalists were trying to reach her before these men could get to her. So when the two investigations, Avery and the two Isabels, compared their notes, they found a criminal web spanning continents. Melanie's ex in New Brunswick, Canada, was connected to Niels in Germany, who had been committing the same crimes against his own wife for at least 15 years. 15 years, you guys. Both were connected to Brian Hayward in Ontario. We're going to go into Brian. Hayward was connected to Tim, also in Germany. Tim was connected to a man in Switzerland, Henri, who wore a fox mask when he assaulted people in videos, and by his own admission had been sedating women for 20 years, bragging about it in online messages to someone he believed was a fellow network member. But it was Avery Haynes undercover. Henri shared his real first name and city. Avery passed them to the Swiss police, and an investigation was launched. German users had Melanie's footage saved in their favorites. Men from Canada, Germany, Switzerland, and other areas. They were connected to each other, sharing victims, methods, women's personal data information like a database. The German journalist put it, these men are very good at manipulation. The women trust them completely. They know exactly how to ensure she won't notice or get suspicious. And they teach each other across borders, across language differences, across continents, on platforms that are hiding in plain sight. So this wasn't just the French problem in Gisèle's case. It's not a Canadian problem. It's not a German problem. It's a global organized network of men targeting the closest to them and finding each other online to do it better. Think about that. Yeah, 15 years. Yeah, Telegram's dangerous, Stormy. I will agree. So it's a total worldwide thing. These creeps are just everywhere. And this is why we're telling the story. Because we need to be aware of what is happening. Now, this is Brian. And Brian Hayward was a 36-year-old home contractor in Ontario. And his path to arrest began not with the police, but with journalists who did what the police were failing to do. Now, before I get to Brian, let me backtrack just a sec. The reason we don't have a photo of Melanie's ex is because the government protects him. Because they said if they let his name out, then they have to let her information out. So you'd put the victim out there. Yeah. Hey, Katrina.
Yeah, that
Glad
doesn't
you're here,
sound
sweetie.
right at all.
No. But this guy, he got outed by the reporters because they saw videos of him. Because this is him from one of his videos. Yeah. So, and it was the journalists that cracked this. Okay. Not the police. They were clicking through the publicly visible friends list of convicted predator. So as she was investigating Jeff's case, she started looking at who his friends were. She found Brian here, and he made himself easy to find. He appeared in his own videos alongside the unmistakable identifier. He lost his left hand, so he's got an amputated left hand. And at least 11 videos, 5 or 6 different women, faces clearly visible, uploaded across multiple public platforms. With what the reporter described as just a little bit of digging, she was able to find his name, his home address, his phone number, and his profession, and found him searching for powerful sedatives, asking how to make his own date drug, and actively tracking down videos of Melanie. So he'd heard about Melanie. He was trying to find her videos. No special access was required. She came on him and all this information. It was out there, plain sight. And what makes this case particularly damning is not just what he did. It's how long the system had known and looked away. Canada, you got some cleaning up to do up there. June of 2023, Hayward returned his 11-year-old daughter from a visit, visibly sedated. She was slumped over and drooling. Her mother, Rachel, rushed her to the ER, demanded toxicology, and it confirmed sedatives. Rachel reported it to the Hamilton police, who investigated. No charges. You return your 11-year-old daughter to your ex-wife. She has sedatives in her system, and you do nothing?
Did they ever say why they did nothing?
Nope, they never said. They just ignored it. Rachel then disclosed to them that during their marriage, he had given her what she believed was a painkiller. She said she lost consciousness and woke up to him strangling her. The police received the information, did nothing. Then an ex-girlfriend came forward with a similar account. Rachel handled it directly to the police along with his network accounts, which contained videos of unconscious women with his face, his amputated hand, clearly visible on camera. They still did nothing. More than half a dozen women contacted this Avery Haynes directly. One was a registered nurse in Toronto. She had texted Hayward in 2022 saying, "You drugged me and assaulted me. That will never be okay." He has a lengthy criminal history spanning cities and decades. In July 2024, he was charged with criminal harassment of an ex-girlfriend, the same woman who would later become the victim in the charges ultimately laid against him. She had first gone to the police nearly a year and a half before his arrest. Took them a year and a half to do something about this lowlife.
Do we know if the police didn't do anything about it, or the prosecution just ignored it? It wasn't high profile enough.
Sadly, crimes against women, they don't take as serious. I mean, that's what it boils down to. The police don't take it as serious.
So it could have been the police,
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Now, the Avery's team compiled everything. His name, his address, his network, his accounts. They handed all this to the Hamilton police. Finally, he was arrested at a drive-thru. Charges did include sexual assault, administering a noxious substance, voyeurism, distribution of intimate images, and assault with a weapon. Police seized GHB and powerful sedatives from his home, the same drug categories that he had been trying to purchase undercover within the same network. Rachel, his ex-wife, who had spent years trying to get someone to listen, said, "I have lost all trust and faith in the system. I truly believe that without your intervention, he would still be free today." And that's what she told Avery. She's almost certainly right, because the RCMP had already declared their investigation into the broader network of these gutter rats complete and closed after Melanie's case. Even though they had people like Hayward still operating, still downloading, and still active, still connected. They had a drug child. They had multiple women on record, a lengthy criminal history, his face on public platforms. But it took a television journalist to move the needle. That scared him. Going public. So, RCMP, we're blasting you.
Well, it would
You
have
didn't
meant
do
it
your
would have meant
job.
that they would have had, yeah, exactly. There's
Yeah.
there's a problem if they, they just didn't do their job, and
Yeah.
they didn't want to have to get out and make a few phone calls and do the legwork that it took to actually close this case in a a manner which somebody went to prison.
Yeah. And it wasn't a matter of even closing it. It was just looking into it. They just ignored it. So this isn't a system that is protecting women. It's a system that fails them at every turn. And let me just ask
you wonder why people get disillusioned with the system.
Yeah. And let me ask you this question. Let's say there was a network of women that were drugging men and they were unconscious and they were doing this to men. How quick do you think that would happen? How quick do you think investigations would be going on if men were the victims?
Most likely pretty quick.
Yeah, exactly. But like I said, it's not just a Canada. It's not just a fringe thing. This is happening everywhere. Let's go to England. CNN interviewed some women from England, and they called the one woman Zoe. And her husband finally confessed after church one day that he had been crushing their son's sleep medication into her last cup of tea every night so he could assault her, photograph her, bind her while she slept. Investigators believe that this had been happening for 10 years. They met when she was only 17 and they had children together. He was finally sentenced to 11 years in prison. It took Zoe a while to even tell anybody because she was in such shock when he confessed. It took her having a terrible anxiety attack. She told her mother, and her mother called the cops because she said, "I worried what would happen to my children. Would they get, painted with the same brush as their father?" Because she has sons. Now there was another woman in the UK named Amanda, and she said she would wake up with unexplained bruises. She'd go to bed dressed and she'd wake up without, she thought she had shorts on when she went to bed, but they weren't there. She knew something was wrong, but she wasn't sure what it was. You start thinking, am I losing my marbles? Did I somehow take them off in the middle of the night? But she couldn't prove anything. And then when the case reached law enforcement, because somehow they found some evidence of what her husband had been doing, they were sitting there watching the video with her. She's looking at this. She sees herself. She sees that she is like dead to the world. She's snoring. You can tell the woman is out and he's committing acts upon her. And she thought, oh my God, there's evidence. And while she's sitting there, these men had the gall to say, well, we can't really use this because you could be pretending to be asleep. Excuse me? Let me say that again. They watched the footage of a woman being assaulted in her home and decided the problem was she could be faking unconsciousness. She'd been abused for 5 years. They found a lot of other photos. They had finally arrested her partner. I think he must have been out on bail because he ended up taking the scaredy cat route and took himself out because he didn't want to go to trial. Yeah. So that's what he did. Simi, you're right. And that happened to Gisele too. She had to sit there and watch these people as they were watching her videos of her being assaulted. Melanie has to live with knowing her videos are still out there on these sites. And why aren't we demanding they be taken down? That's where I have a problem. And some of the drugs, you guys, that they're sharing and telling you where to buy is propofol. That's what killed Michael Jackson. That is a heavy-duty drug. Yeah, fella, I know. I don't know if you'd smack the officer or tase him. You'd be doing something, I know. But yeah, so just think about that. And these networks, they're not buried in some unreachable corner of the internet, like I said. Investigators have purchased the drugs through the standard shipping services herself. She said the packages look like regular deliveries. She says the substances are sold as powerful sedatives, ordered online, shipped internationally with a dropper and dosing instructions, including the propofol. This is deadly. Like Melanie's fiance said, there were several times in that video that he was surprised she didn't die because he could tell she was having trouble breathing. Hey, surf girl, good to see you, darling. Yeah. And so they're just, like having, and there were, I should say, until Avery started asking Amazon, while there were some things that could be turned into date rape drugs that all of a sudden are now no longer on Amazon. Yeah. But these come right to your door, everyday medicines that don't have a taste, don't cause a reaction, and leave the body within 12 hours. Some of them, like, Zoe's husband was using his own son's medication. But these guys are all sharing this online, telling each other what to do, how to do it, use this, don't use that. That's what's so disgusting. And they call these women, their wives, their partners, ragdolls. They discuss how they should be dressed. Put her in this, pose her like this. These are the conversation these gutter rats are having. A psychologist who assisted dozens of families connected to Gisele's case said he believes the men in these networks are driven by a fantasy of domination, a fantasy cultivated by a culture that teaches some men to view women as objects to be controlled rather than human beings to be respected. I think that's a lot of it. I think that women are looked down upon as like a second-class citizen. And that's a problem. That is a huge problem. And these communities that they are building online to normalize this behavior, they celebrate it. They give it an audience. They market. They have a supply chain. Think about it. Now, in the UK, they said 1 in 4 people who report sexual assaults say they were unconscious or asleep at the time. but they said that number has risen over the past decade. One of the most significant barriers to prosecution is time, because most of these drugs that get used in these assaults will leave the body within 12 hours. So if you don't know what's happening, how can you be tested? And if a woman does wake up, she's confused. If you do process what may have happened and you decide to seek help, you need to get the physical evidence before it's gone. You need to get there and demand a drug test. You know? There's also a legal problem many Americans don't know about, and that's marital assault was not illegal in all 50 states until 1993. Before then, a man could do exactly what the bottom feeder did to Gisele and face no criminal consequences because of a marriage certificate. I want you to think about that. The tradition traces to a 17th century English jurist, Sir Matthew Hale, who wrote that a wife, by marrying, irrevocably consented to sex with her husband. Consent she cannot take back. I think he needed to be taken out. And yeah. American law imported that doctrine, built it on for centuries. Today, marital assault is technically illegal in all 50 states, okay? But there are 17 states that still maintain laws that make it harder, sometimes much harder, to prosecute if the victim was unconscious, drugged, or incapacitated, because laws require proof of physical force, separate from the assault itself. In those states, a spouse cannot be convicted of assaulting an incapacitated partner. That's not a loophole, you guys. That is a codified protection for abusers. And here on the map, it shows you the states: Rhode Island, Connecticut, Michigan, Ohio, Virginia, South Carolina, Mississippi, Oklahoma, California, Nevada, and Idaho. If you live in those states, keep a taser handy. Minnesota closed its exemption in 2019. California and Idaho followed in 2021. And the landscape is shifting, but not fast enough. South Carolina remains among the most restrictive. Victims only have 30 days, a 30-day window to report. In many cases, you have to require proof of aggravated force or a weapon to meet the prosecution threshold. Yeah, fella, Virginia. Think about that. 30 days. How long has Gisele been essayed by the bottom feeder? Years. She didn't know. In Ohio, advocates have been fighting since the 80s for House Bill 161, which would eliminate spousal assault exemptions when the victim is incapacitated. Why since the 80s? Come on, Ohio, what's going on up there? You got a lot of gutter rats? Time to clean house. It has passed the state house and is moving through the Senate. Since the 90s, Emily Gemar of the Ohio Alliance to End Sexual Violence says these exemptions don't just protect the perpetrators, they prevent the victims from seeking help, from obtaining a protective order. Think about that. If we're not allowing people to report a crime to break that cycle of abuse, they may stay in a relationship longer and be subject to escalating abuse as time goes on. So as far as I'm concerned, if you're allowing that to happen, the judicial system, you're part of it. You know? There is a term for what the bottom feeder did to Gisele, what the gutter rats in these networks do. What happened to Gisele, Zoe, Amanda, and Melanie? It's called chemical submission. We got to get it out there. Chemical submission. Carolyn Darien, Gisele's daughter, has made it her mission to force that term into law, medicine, and policy. She brought it directly to the French Parliament alongside politician Sandrine Josse, who herself survived chemical submission in 2023 when she had a colleague spike her drink at a formal function. There are many things to do. Training the police. We have to train medical professionals. We have to train judges. We have to train everyone. Remember these words, say them out loud, because crimes without names aren't taken seriously. It's chemical submission. You're not able to consent. And France's own legal definition of the crime is part of why this is so hard to prosecute and so easy to downplay. The French SA laws do not include the word consent. It defines assault as a sexual act committed through violence, coercion, or surprise. A definition built around the stereotype of a stranger attack. It doesn't adequately address what happens between people who know each other. Where the vast majority of assaults actually occur is by someone you know. 19 other European countries have updated their laws to center consent as a core element of the crime. France was part of that EU movement a decade ago, but declined to join it. President Macron has voiced support for reviewing the law. Macron, get off your high horse and get it done. That's all I can tell you, dude. You're a loser if you don't. A parliamentary report called for adding language around non-consenting acts, but nothing has changed. Here's the number that tells you what the gap costs. 96% of reported assaults in France never come anywhere near a courtroom. 96%. I want you to think about that. 96%. Research shows here in the US, out of 1,000 sexual assaults, only 34% may be accepted for prosecution, but some databases are showing it's only 18.5% of cases actually go to trial here in the US. Canada, only about 21 sexual assaults reported to the police go on to a trial. Those numbers are awful. That is terrible. The mayor of Mazan, the village where Gisele and the bottom feeder lived, asked during the trial. This was the mayor of the town where this terrible assault and these creepy, cesspooled rejects lived. He asked during the trial, why was this case receiving so much press attention? His reason, nobody died. That was his threshold. A decade of assault against a woman in her own home when she is unaware, not giving consent. And his question is, why are we paying attention to this? Kind of sounds like, why are we still talking about the Epstein files? And here's a number that should stop you cold right here in America. Okay, you guys ready? A survey from the National Resource Center on Domestic Violence found that 50% of male college students believe it is impossible for a man to sexually assault his wife.
50%? What was 50%?
Of male college students do not think that you can sexually assault your own wife. 34% of the same students said they would assault someone if they knew they could get away with it.
And therein lies the problem.
And that
a lot of people in general, if they think they can get away with it.
Yep. But for 50% of young men to say they didn't even think you can sexually assault your wife, I have questions. How are we raising young boys and men? Or are we just raising gutter rats? Parents, if you have young boys in your family, young men, you need to start having some conversation about what consent is. Because
Well, there are
apparently,
some parents that need to have conversation with their kids. Period.
yeah, exactly.
It doesn't happen, anymore. Everybody's doing this, that, and when they get home, the kids are on their phones, on texting, and
Yep.
that's it. It's done.
Yeah. But anybody that has young men in their family, ask them this question. See what replies you get back. Might be eye-opening.
Hmm.
Because I think one question I would have asked these young men is, what would you feel if it was your mother, your sister, your grandmother? Just a thought. And this isn't some fringe ideology. We're talking about attitudes that live in ordinary homes, ordinary relationships, and ordinary marriages right now. If a stranger does,
Unfortunately, it's a situation in a lot of the society that we live in, that a problem is not a problem until it's a problem. It's not
that's
a
one.
problem until it happens to you. It's just,
Yep. That's one of Doc's favorite sayings, guys. Say it again, Doc.
it's not a problem until it's a problem.
Yeah.
And then it becomes
And
a
that's,
problem.
yeah. So here's a question. If a stranger does this to a woman, it's a crime. If a husband does the same thing to his wife, in 17 American states, the law may still protect him instead of her. When did a marriage certificate become a loophole? Will we see even fewer women wanting to get married? I mean, come on. Makes you wonder. And I want to speak directly to the women watching right now. Here's something. I don't want to scare anyone. It's not a scare tactic. It's not to make you afraid to close your eyes at night. But because Gisele went 9 years without knowing, because Zoe went 10, because Amanda spent 5 years waking confused and police told her that she might be faking it, because the evidence is gone within 12 hours, with these drugs. We live in a world where the person who is supposed to love us, protect us, make us feel safe can be the very person you need to be aware of. That's not a world any of us wanted. It's not the world we're in tonight. So hear this clearly and pay attention. If you wake up to find your clothing is not what you went to bed in, or it's disturbed in a way you can't explain, you wake up with unexplained bruising, soreness, or physical sensations that weren't present when you fell asleep. Maybe you're getting memory gaps that don't match how much you drank, if you did drink, or that occur on nights when you didn't drink at all. You feel unusually groggy in the morning, far beyond a normal night's sleep would normally leave you. Your partner seems unusually attentive to making sure you have one last drink for the night. It could be tea, it could be hot cocoa, or he insists you finish it before bed. Maybe it's ice cream, like with Gisele. That was one of the things. Are you being brought something before you go to bed? All the time. Something feels off, even if you can't name it. If those hairs on the back of your neck start itching, trust it. Your body's not wrong. If any of this sounds familiar, go to an emergency room. Tell them you may have been drugged. Request a full toxicology panel. Ask them to take a hair out of your head and have it checked for previous drugs. Don't wait. Don't shower first if you can help it. You need to go and get the proof. And you need to just show up. And if the first person you tell The first doctor something doesn't believe you, tell another. And another. Gisele showed up every single day of that trial. You show up too. If you have a friend that tells you of strange things happening, recommend she goes and gets checked. It's sad that we have to think of the people that we care for could be a predator, but it could be. Alcohol is the number one substance involved in drug-facilitated assaults. And it's not because it's more powerful than the sedatives from pharmaceuticals, but it's because it's legal. It's ambiguous, and it's easy to use without detection. So let's be absolutely clear. The only person that's responsible for sexual violence is the person who commits it. We're not putting anything on the victims. Mm-hmm. It doesn't matter how much you drank, what you were wearing, where you were, or who they went home with. An unconscious person cannot give consent. A heavily sedated person cannot consent. A sleeping person cannot consent. A minor can never, ever give consent. Consent means a clear, active, freely given yes. Not the absence of a no. Not silence. Not a body that doesn't fight back. A yes. And consent given in the past is not a permanent pass for everything that follows. A woman has a right to change her mind. Even in the middle, if something feels off and a woman tells you to stop, she's taken that consent back. Full stop. There was a TED Talk that I watched today, and I want you to picture this. This guy comes out on stage. He's got a whiteboard, right? He draws a line down the middle. One side, men, one side, women. He turns to the men's in the audience. What do you do every day on a daily basis to not get assaulted? There's a long silence. Finally, one man yells out, "Don't go to prison." So the speaker writes it on the board under men, "Don't go to prison." Then he turns back and he says, "What else?" There was nothing. He says, "Okay, we'll come back to you." He turns to the women. "What do you do on a daily basis not to be assaulted?" He fills up the entire thing. He starts writing up the side of the board. The women are shouting out, "Keys between our fingers as we walk to the car. Check the back seat before you get in. Don't jog at night. Don't wear a ponytail so no one can grab it. Don't leave your drink unattended. Don't walk to your car alone. Tell someone where you're going." The list went on and on. Then he pointed back to the men's side of the board. One answer: don't go to prison. And he asked, "Even then, even in prison, if you guys go to prison, who's the perpetrator?" Another man. The penny dropped. It's not a woman's problem. This is a human problem. And it's been handed to women to manage alone their entire lives. We're the ones that manage it. We're the ones that train our daughters, our nieces. You know? Tonight, we're handing it back to everyone, to the men and the women. Now, before I speak to the men in the audience, I want to address what this story gets framed, because the framing matters. This case about Gisele is called a feminist story. That ticks me off. The moment it is significant, a portion of people, particularly the men who most need to hear this story, feel like it isn't their conversation because we use the word feminist, like it's something for a woman to fight about. Women have to go fight this to solve it. And that's not what this is. What happened to Gisele is a human story. It's about fundamental dignity, about what happens in communities, marriages, and neighborhoods when people believe they will not face consequences. It's about ordinary people doing monstrous things. not because they were monsters in every part of their lives, but because they found enough other gutter rats online who told them, it's okay, this is normal. Hannah Arnett wrote about the banality of evil. She said the idea that atrocities are not always committed by the obvious villain, the guy in the trench coat in the alley, but by the ordinary guy, the guy at the bakery, the lorry driver, have normalized what we should never normalize. This is exactly what happened in Mazan in France, and is exactly what is happening right now on those platforms. Those 50 cesspool rejects were not just failing women, they were failing to understand what it means to be a person. The feminist story framing lets the broader world off the hook. Because if it's a feminist story, it's to do with them. The humanist framing says something different. It diminishes all of us. Gisele seemed to understand this better than anyone, because after the verdict, she did not declare war. She spoke of women and men living together in harmony and mutual respect. So she didn't just go after guys. She didn't draw a line. She was issuing an invitation. That vision belongs to all of us, you guys, every person in this chat right now. And I want to speak directly to the men in our audience, because this cannot be women's work alone. The men who run these networks, the gutter rats, they don't hide from other men. They recruit among them. They share in group chats. They post in forums. They seek validation from their peers. Somewhere in the orbit of every man who does this are other men who know about it, who saw messages, who might have received an invitation. They didn't participate, but they stayed quiet. They stayed silent. These rejects that were invited to Gisele's home, some of them did walk away and didn't participate, but they didn't go tell the police. They didn't tell Gisele. They said nothing, while other rejects just kept walking through the door and assaulting her. And when her husband was first caught, the police released him as they built that case, remember? He didn't stop. He went home, sat across from the table from his wife, had breakfast with her, and kept going. That's who we're dealing with. Not people who stumble into something and feel remorse. People who get caught and then start calculating. And I'm not here to bash men. The gutter rats who do this, they're predators. They don't get to hide behind that word men, because they're not. What they do is not masculine. It's not dominance. It's not being a man's man. It is a coward dressed up as control.
It's interesting that this conversation really hits home. I've been watching a little bit of Professor McLeod's his stream that we did, and one of the things that he brings out is that everybody talks about that this is violence against women, and it is. I'm not saying that it's not. Okay, but when you say violence against women, he said, unfortunately, men disengage from the conversation because it's nothing to do with them. It's violence against women. He said, now he goes, in my opinion, it would be better to say it's violence perpetrated by men. That might get men's attention, because then it becomes a man's issue, and you got to fix it.
Yeah. Because most men are fixers.
Mm-hmm.
They see a problem and they want to fix it.
That's exactly right.
Because how many women have we told our significant other, I just wanted to debrief myself and get this out. I didn't mean for you to try and fix my problem. I just wanted you to listen to my problem.
Yeah.
So, but this is a problem. Men, help us fix.
Yes.
We need it fixed. And this is what I need from the men, because you're the men that are better than these gutter rats. Be louder. In your group chats, in your friendships, when someone sends something they shouldn't, when you see that invitation, know it might mean something else, say something. I like men. I'm going to tell you right now, I do. And especially the man in the other room with the white beard, my ride or die dog. You know, and I have witnessed him actually in his chats that he's having, and he's turned to me and had conversations with me about some of the things these guys have said, and it bugs him, and he'll go back and tell them that this isn't right. You know, and he isn't ashamed to stand up and say, this, I'm not talking like this. I don't need to be here. If this is how this group wants to do things, I'm gone. You know, because he, you know, we've been married for many eons, you know, being a 300-year-old vampire.
Yeah.
Eons. Yeah. And he had a mother, he has a sister, he has nieces, you know, he respects women. So he's not going to allow that kind of conversation to go on. And that's what a true man does. I can honestly tell you, I have his passwords for everything. He has the passwords, all my passwords. Anytime I want to get into his email, because with our YouTube channel and our business that we have going here, I get into his stuff all the time. He gets into mine.
We have each other's emails on our desktop. It's not there. There's complete visibility.
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing we're doing in secret. It's no big deal. Hey, Hellcat.
Hey.
You know, and that's why, this is why we have to try and stand up for each other. You know, I'm not, you know, tonight we're focusing on what's happened with women. I'm not saying that we know men can be SA'd also, but this is a particular story we're following. I have been wanting to tell Gisele's story for a while. I've had my research to the side. And then when it came out about this academy of SAs and what's going on, and this is current, I was able to combine them because it just didn't happen to one person. And when guys are willing to stand up to another group, to a group of guys, and say, this is not how we talk about women. You know, if a guy is saying something about a young minor, you know, maybe there's an actress on TV and he says some derogatory thing, and you know she's a minor, point it out to him. Because that's not okay. You know, don't be so worried about what the other guys might like you. These are internet friends, or even if they're real life friends. Because do you want to be friends with a gutter rat? I don't think so. Do you want to be one of those people that one day your friend gets arrested and they're interviewing you on TV and go, oh, well, I didn't know. Or, well, he kind of hinted at things, but yeah. Don't be that person. Because only predators talk the way about women. And your silence is actually what's letting this grow. And to the women watching, your anger is not a problem to be managed. It is completely reasonable response to an unreasonable world. There are women right now, they're turning that anger into something. They're doing self-defense classes, community programs, threat assessment training, women teaching other women how to read body language, how to interact with law enforcement, what to say, what language to use so that they're taken seriously when they report. Look for those spaces in your communities. You know, a lot of people say, well, take a karate class. Karate is actually not the best class. They say judo, Brazilian jiu-jitsu. Those are more women-focused self-defense programs because they actually help smaller people in a conflict with the bigger person. And mostly the women is the smaller person if she's up against some guy. These exist. Find them. You know, your rage is information. It's going to move you forward, and use it. But let's look at some missing people. Please stay alert. You could save a life. Remember these faces. Some left voluntarily but can't safely return home. Others never had a choice. Victims of human trafficking and missing persons cases go unnoticed every day. The person you pass by could be someone's missing family member. Trust your instincts. If you recognize someone from today's cases or notice something that doesn't sit right, don't assume someone else is going to do something. Go ahead and call the numbers, call 911. You can email us at tips4 trialjunkiesunited@gmail.com. We'll pass along anything. Remember, the smallest detail could really help. Our first person we have is Alfreda Gregory. She's 25. She's been missing since early February of 2026 from Anchorage, Alaska. She has dark brown eyes and black hair. She's 5'1", 115 pounds. Alfreda has not made contact with her family since February 4th. She was experiencing some homelessness in Anchorage, but I think she usually stayed in contact. They have not heard from her. She has a NamUs number, M as in Michael, P as in Paul, 156745. Contact the Anchorage Police at 907-786-8900. That case number is 26-5623. Alaska State Troopers, 907-269-5511. Case number A as in Apple, K as in King, 260-24392. Always, you can call 911. Dawson Thomas, 18 years old. He's been missing since April 8th. He was missing since 10 p.m. from Moncton, New Brunswick, Canada. Richibucto Village. He is got brown eyes and brown hair. He's 5'7" and weighs 143 pounds. Last seen wearing a dark blue jacket with white, green, blue, red hoodie. Jeans, white New Balance shoes. He had a black backpack. Contact the Richibucto RCMP at 506-523-4611. Our next one is Jasmine Rose Victorino. Victorino. Thank you. 25. They actually did issue a turquoise alert. Yes, get the alert out there. April 15th was when she went missing from Albuquerque, New Mexico. She was last seen leaving her residence near Osnoon Road, Northeast and La Fiesta. You can tell when I start getting thirsty. La Fiesta Drive, Northeast, at 10 a.m. She is 5'3". She weighs 154 pounds. Her hair and eyes are brown. She was last seen wearing a black hoodie, black sweats, and pink slippers. The police are concerned. Albuquerque Police Department, 505-242-2677. That case number is 2600319979. So please, if you know, have seen anything, call someone. Sometimes the most important words don't come from a courtroom news article. They come from the people typing in the middle of the night because they don't know where else to put their thoughts. Someone posted this online, and you want to start a revolution? Start by holding the predators in your own family accountable. That creepy uncle, the weird aunt, the child, grandfather. The revolution against sexual violence starts at home. When we finally say out loud what has been covered up for generations, name names, file police reports, go public, reveal the enablers. Someone replied, when I was groomed and assaulted as a teenager, I reported it to adults in my community. They protected the abuser. I was told not to ruin his life and coerced into signing away my rights. Of course, if you were a minor, you can't sign those rights away. 20 years later, I still can't publicly say his name because I fear being sued. The best I can do is keep writing. A third person wrote, a close relative served on a jury in a case in which a man molested a young girl. She spoke up. Her parents supported her. Half the family took his side. The trial ended in a hung jury because some people didn't believe what he did was serious enough to warrant prison. She did everything right. He still walked. Silence protects the predators. Something worth noting about the wives and partners of some of these convicted gutter rats that harmed Gisele, not all of them stood by their husbands, but some did. The Sunday Times reporter Katie Tarrant tracked down one, a woman she calls Charlotte. Charlotte drives more than an hour each way to visit her gutter rat in prison. She spent 20,000 euros on his defense. She told the reporter that the family suffered more than the accused. How dare she?
Oh, what an idiot.
During the investigation, police actually asked the wives and partners of these gutter rats when they brought them in to provide hair samples because hair retains evidence of drug exposure over time. 3 of these women, their test results came back positive. Think about that. It was happening to them. At least one of the women tried to press charges against her partner. It failed. The police didn't take it seriously. These women who may not yet know what was done to them, and some of them are standing in a kitchen somewhere right now, defending that person who did it. This is what we got to stop doing as women. This is how deep this goes. This is how thoroughly it can be hidden inside what looks like an ordinary life. Gisele refused to be silent, and she changed people's thoughts of how the shame should go. The shame needs to be on the perpetrators, not the victims. So to tie this together, Gisele's case and the online assault academy are not 2 separate stories. They are one. The bottom feeder did not invent this. He used a system that already existed, a chat room, a network, a community of gutter rats or cesspool rejects who already normalized targeting unconscious women and teaching each other how to do it better. A global web of gutter rats who see women not as human beings, but as objects to be used, filmed, traded, and sold while they sleep. From France to Canada to Germany to Switzerland, it's worldwide, on platforms that are publicly accessible, hiding in plain sight. What Gisele did was force all of us, not just the women, not just any one group, but all of us, humanity, to look at it, to say its name, chemical submission, to refuse to let it stay in the dark where it thrives. She's now 73. 17 of these men convicted of assaulting her have filed appeals, which means she will sit in a courtroom again. She's already said she's going. She's still showing up. If she can do that, we can keep talking about it. We can keep saying it out loud. We can refuse, every single one of us, to be part of the silence that lets this continue. Let's also be training our sons and our daughters so that our daughters know, don't stand for someone that has this low an opinion of you. That matters. It really does. Remember, every killer, every predator depends on our silence. Don't give it to them. You know, if you see something, make sure you're saying something. Don't be quiet like some of those cesspooled rejects that walked in there, saw Gisele, walked out, and then didn't say a word. And if you know something, speak up, because that wasn't a mannequin. It never is. Someone knows something. Someone always does. And you know what? Our motto is silence is betrayal. If you have a story that requires our attention, contact us at trialjunkiesunited@gmail.com. Every Thursday night, you know that we do our
Indigenous
MMIP stories.
friend.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And we want to make sure that they are not forgotten, because those stories matter just like everybody else's stories. But that is our focus, is to get these out. I really appreciate you guys for coming tonight, because this was a tough one. I'm not going to, I know it was. Simi, yes, trust your gut.
Yeah,
Balance it.
and keep in mind, everybody, that until this problem is fixed, and who knows if it will be. I mean, we live in a society that doesn't, unfortunately, it doesn't put the right emphasis where it needs to be. And so
Yeah.
the women in the audience, please, please take it seriously, and whether you need to take some self-defense classes, awareness of what's going on, all the things that Z talked about tonight. And if you're one of the guys in the audience, make sure that you're talking to people about it. If somebody says something that you don't quite agree with, you call them out on it. I mean, that's the only way that things are going to change. Unfortunately, we live in a male-dominated society, and guys have to change this whole mentality, as it stands right now.
Yeah.
If women had more of a voice, yes, but unfortunately, get the guys, whether it's your congressman, whether it's whoever that may be, that has the authority to change the tactics that happen. Get the message out to them, get it
Yeah.
changed, and until then, the women, please, please be careful.
Yeah. Let your daughters know. Let your mothers, your sisters, your friends know. Chemical submission.
Yeah.
It's real. Make sure your sons know that women can be sexually assaulted by their husbands, by their boyfriends. Teach them what consent is. No means no. Now, I know, Farquaad, thanks for coming, darling. I know Semi and Fala were talking about aliens. I know Southern Gal did something on aliens the other night, so who knows what we have in store with us coming up. We might have to do a fun show very soon, because this was very, very heavy topic.
Yeah.
But until next time, you guys, please stay informed, stay compassionate, keep seeking the truth, keep demanding justice, never stop speaking up. Do you want to say goodnight, Doc?
Good night, Doc.
And even though Moo's sleeping, she's over there in the chair. I know she sends her best.
Yeah.
We love you all. Remember, criminals never stop. Neither do we. And until next time, keep fighting for justice. We're going to see you on the next TJU Presents Justice After Dark. Ciao. We love y'all.
She trusted you with everything she had. You turned to sleep into your hunting ground. You ran to show the others what you'd done, and hid behind your screen and called it power. You don't get to call yourself a man. You don't get to hide behind a noise. and called it entertainment, called it fun. This is your academy of shame. Every click, every chat, every frame you traded women like they had no name. There is no hole deep enough to hide what you did in the dark. This is your academy of shame. She was your wife, your partner, your forever. She believed your arms were the safest place to live. You reduced her to a stream, a transaction. She never said yes, and she never knew. You don't get to call yourself a man. You don't get to hide behind a normal life. You built a school for monsters in the night and called it entertainment, called it fun. This is your academy of shame. Every click, every chat, every frame you traded women like they had no name. There is no hole deep enough to hide what you did in the dark. This is your academy of To the men who knew, who stayed behind that door, your silence let the monster grow and spread.